Hello everyone and welcome back once again to Newegg TV. My name is Paul and today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this new case from Fractal Design. This is the Arc Midi R2. We're going to start off with a quick look at some of the specs here on the retail box. As far as drive bay capacity, you get two 5¼ inch bays. You also get 8 3.5 inch hard drive trays, and all of them will have mounting positions for 2.5 inch drives such as SSDs. You also get two 2.5 inch dedicated SSD storage positions which are at the back of the motherboard tray. A 7+1 PCI expansion slots. This case will fit ATX, Micro ATX, and Mini ATX motherboards. You get a couple USB 3.0 ports on the front, also has audio I/O, power button reset, and all that good stuff. Power supply compatibility for ATX power supplies up to 170 millimeters deep. If you are going to be using the bottom fan location, up to 270 if you're not using that bottom fan location. And then for graphics cards lengths, up to 290 millimeters in lengths. With the top hard drive cage installed, or if you remove that hard drive cage, you can go all the way up to 430 millimeters in length. Also for CPU coolers, up to 180 millimeters, 26 millimeters space at the back for cable routing. That's about 1 inch behind the motherboard tray. Also thick rubber grommets in the holes for the motherboard plate. An acrylic side panel with a smoky glass window. Here's your case dimensions, weight, as well as the color, which is black. And here's a look at the case itself, which is spinning around on our Lazy Susan here, which is kind of a loud Lazy Susan, sorry about that. But anyway, Fractal. Fractal is known for a minimalist Scandinavian design. That's straight from our Fractal rep, Josh. And to that end, what you have here with the Arc Midi R2 is sort of a combination of the Arc Mini's design aesthetics and the internals of the Define R4, which are a couple other cases from Fractal. If you look here on the right side, you'll see a pretty standard flat black panel. On the front, you have a plastic bezel, but it has sort of a faux brushed metal finish to it, which actually comes out quite nicely. And the fact that it's a plastic bezel rather than metal does keep the cost of the case down a little bit. Fractal Design logo down there at the bottom middle. There's your two 5¼ inch bays, and this panel does pop off if you push it in, like so. So there's a bit of foam back there, so that's going to be your air filter for your front intake fan, so as dust collects on there, you can use some canned air or possibly separate this and go over it with a vacuum cleaner to clean that off and keep your case nice and tidy as far as the internals go. Here on the front, you have one included 140 millimeter intake fan, also space down here for an additional 140 or 120 millimeter fan, and you also have the option here at the front for a 240 millimeter radiator. In fact, I know there's going to be some folks who are going for a water cooling configuration in here, and you do have space with the proper configuration inside for a 240 millimeter rad at the front and another 240 millimeter rad at the top. Apart from that, the front panel does pop off with a simple tug like so. At the back, you can see the 5¼ inch panels, which pop off just like that with the little push of the clips on the side. Here's a look at the other side of the 140 millimeter fan. And the fans do mount directly to this front bezel, which makes it fairly simple to install them, or a radiator for that matter. Looking here at the front, without the bezel on it, we can see the some of the I/O connectivity up there at the top. Here's the lower 5¼ inch bay, which has a 3.5 inch cutout right there at the center, so you can use that panel if you want to, if you're going to put a 3.5 inch in there. Apart from that, we'll move on to the side here where you can see, don't worry, there's some plastic, which I will peel off. Hey, why don't I just peel it off right now? That looks like it's on the outside. I thought it was on the inside. Wait, I can't get the corner. Just a sec. Anyway, this is a clear side panel window. There is plastic on the inside as well, and you can probably tell it has kind of a smoked finish. So it's a bit of a tinted clear side panel window right there, so you can see your internals once they're installed. Here at the back, you have thumb screws, which are holding on the side panels. You also have a couple thumb screws at top. You can remove those to pop this entire front panel off, which I'll do in just a moment. You have a 140 millimeter rear exhaust fan, some additional exhaust up here with some honeycomb grill. There's a knockout for your I/O, as well as your 7+1 PCI slots there. Power supply mount is down there at the bottom, and they have included, which I will lift briefly here, another dust filter, a fairly long one, which will cover your power supply, as well as the additional fan mount, which is on the inside, which I'll also show you in just a moment. That brings us back around to the right side panel, which is, well, why don't I go ahead and pop that off as well? Since we're here, a couple thumb screws, and there we go. So you can see the side panels are quite sturdy. There's not too much bow or flex to them. They've kind of rolled the steel over here around the edges to give that a bit additional support. And very nice paint job as well, I should say. Entire case interior is painted black as well as the outside, so it all matches quite nicely. There's a look at some of the rubber grommets here where you have a cable management area down here by the power supply, as well as for the cables here for your motherboard, optical drives, and your hard drives. Fairly decent size knockout there for the back of your CPU if you're going to do an aftermarket CPU heatsink fan installation. Very nice to have an open back plate. You also have a couple more rubber grommets up there at the top, which I kind of missed. A few cable tie-down points right here where you're most likely going to be routing the majority of your cables for your power supply and whatnot. You also have the sort of business end of your drive cages right there. I'm going to be popping those out to show the configurations available. And then here at the front, you do have an integrated fan controller, if I'm not mistaken. So for that right here, you have the Molex plug and three 3-pin fan headers. I've laid the case on the side so we can take a closer look at the bottom. As you can see, you have some fairly sizable feet that the case will rest on. There's rubber at the bottom, so that will help provide some noise dampening as well as protect the surface or the desk that you might be setting the case on. There's also another look at that dust filter, which I have replaced. Again, covers your power supply area right here, as well as the additional fan mount right there, which can accept 120 or a 140 millimeter fan if you want to provide some additional airflow. It does not come pre-populated. And then flipping around back to the top, again, we've got a couple thumb screws back here, which you can remove, and then you can pop off this top panel. So this kind of acts as its own dust filter as well. Again, you have some foam right here that's going to provide a bit of noise dampening, as well as, of course, help catch any pesky desks. So you can pop this off and clean that off to get your case nice and clean. Here at the top, we will notice a fairly substantial set of configurations for fan mounts. First off, right in this area, you're going to have, well, a whole variety of mounts. Now, first off, you have a 240 millimeter mount. You also have an offset 240 millimeter mount. So if you're looking at it from this side, your motherboard is going to be at this end, right? So if you have a radiator right here, for example, if it's positioned towards the motherboard, you might have some issues with clearance right up here towards the top. So you can move it to an outer position. That would be offset from the center of the case, but it will provide you additional clearance for your motherboard if you wanted to go that route. Apart from the 240 millimeter mounts, those are, of course, also 2 by 120 millimeter mounts if you wanted to just do fans there for exhaust. You get a pre-installed 140 millimeter fan right here. You can add another 140 millimeter fan if you want. Then you also have mounts right here for a 200 millimeter fan, as well as additional mounts up there at the front for an additional 120 or 140 millimeter fan. So plenty of fan options here at the top of the case. And then, of course, we have our inputs and output panel, which is right there. Bear in mind, again, this is going to be the top of the case at the very front. So you have a 3-position fan controller here for 5, 7, and 12 volt configurations. So it's going to be voltage. It's going to be using voltage to adjust your fan speeds, hence the 3-pin fan headers inside the case. A couple USB 3.0 ports. Here's your power button as well as your power light. Then you also have a reset button down here, which is recessed, and then your headphone and microphone jack for audio. Now we're going to move back to the interior, and bear in mind I've left that side panel off, so you're going to be able to see right through the case, but that's why. But I'm just going to remove these other 2 thumb screws here for the left side panel, and that will just pop right off again. So here's a look at the inside of that, and more plastic I get to peel. Ooh, so exciting. Okay, so there's your sort of tinted side panel window, as you can see from both sides. Should give you a nice view of the components you have installed once they are installed. And now here we have what was at one point, when this was actually shipped, this was held in place by twist ties, and I think somebody else had taken a look at this case and untwisted them. But anyway, here's your front panel connectors, and first off you have HD audio as well as AC97 audio. Newer motherboards will almost always use the HD audio for that. That's for your front panel mic and headphone. For your front panel connectors, such as power and reset, you have the little headers right there, LEDs and power and resets. Here you also have a combo plug for the USB 3.0 front panel. So this one's kind of nice. If you have an older motherboard that doesn't have this 20-pin connector and you're okay with the front panel plugs operating at USB 2.0 speeds, you can plug in that one right there, and that will give you USB 2.0 from your 2 front panel USB connectors, and they have put a little warning there because you don't want to plug both of those in at the same time. It's a one or the other option for you. Okay, so there's your front panels. I'm just going to tuck those back away. Apart from that, up here at the top, you can see the other side of that knockout for your CPU rear panel. You can see the cables for your top and rear exhaust fans. These are, again, 3-pin cables, so 3-pin fan headers, I should say. The cables are nicely sleeved, so that keeps with the kind of black and white aesthetic, which you've probably noticed by now the interior of the case has. So there's your PCI slots there at the back, which are all white, as well as your +1, so 7+1 right there. And then down at the bottom, you got your power supply mount. You have some raised little foam pads that it will set on to, again, help reduce some vibration and noise. On the inside to the right of the power supply, you can see, again, that additional fan mounts. If your power supply stays within that minimum length, you can put an additional fan there, probably an intake fan to provide some extra air up towards the graphics cards, particularly since the side panel doesn't have a fan mount on it. And then your drive cages. So there's your two 5¼ drive bays up at the top. They do not have toolless mounting solutions, but I find with optical drives I tend to screw them in anyway to help keep them steady. If they're getting up and spinning, they can be a little bit louder. And then we have this removable drive cage with 5 drives in it and really tight thumb screws. One sec. Okay, I've located my screwdriver, and oftentimes from the factory these are screwed in with power tools, so they can often be tight, but once you've loosened them, then they become thumb screws one more time. So there we go. Removing these 2 thumb screws gives you some different configuration options for your drive cages. Since a lot of folks aren't necessarily going to be using up all of these, the upper cage here is removable, like so, and also rotatable. So if you like it in this position, that will give you better access to the connection points for your serial ATA connectors, for example. But if you rotate it this way, like so, you will get more direct airflow across the drives from your front intake fan, which is right up there at the front. So a couple different configuration options, or of course you can just remove this cage entirely, and that will provide you plenty of space up there for longer graphics cards or simply more direct airflow from the fan up at the front. As far as the drive cages themselves, I'm actually a fan of these because they aren't toolless, for one thing, and again, you're pretty much going to be using screws to mount drives these days anyway. And the fact that they're all metal and you don't necessarily have to bend them to snap around a drive or anything like that. So they're also white, which again gives you a bit of an aesthetic bonus, I suppose. And then we have this drive cage down here at the bottom, and this one also has a couple positions. So right now it's in the standard position. You do have the option, you need to unscrew it from the bottom, so I'm not going to actually demonstrate that right now, but removing these screws from the bottom of the case, and you can also remove this panel if you want to, because it's not really necessary unless you have it in this position and you're using the upper cage as well. But you can shift it this way a little bit, and you can shift it this way all the way. That will block the intake fan position right here, but it does give you a couple more options, and particularly that's set up that way because if you want to set up a radiator at the front, particularly if you're going to go with a thicker radiator or push-pull configuration for it, you're going to need more space, and that will allow you to keep the drive cage and have your drives in there, of course, because you need somewhere to put your drives, and also have the additional space up there for your radiator. Kind of nice. Okay, let's finish off with a look at accessories. Got a box of them right here. And that looks to be all that's in there. We also have a manual right there, which I set aside at the beginning. So user's manual from Fractal, like so. This will kind of flip through a few pages right there. Ooh, it's in French. I'm sure it's also in English at some point. Okay, yes, also English. I swear there's English in here. Ah, English was right at the beginning. Okay, this is many languages, so a layout of the case and whatnot. English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Polish, Russian, Spanish, Swedish, and an exploded view, which they say is at the back. I want to take a look. Exploded view. Oh, I see. This is actually a full fold-out exploded view. All right. And that's about as much coverage on a case instruction manual as I've ever done. We also have a little notification here that if you do have any issues, you can contact Fractal directly. They'd love to help you out. And then lastly, for our accessories in here, we have, individual bags. I do love when case manufacturers split up the screws so you don't have to organize them yourself. Alright, so we've got, it looks like about 6 zip ties to help with cable management. We have screws here for mounting to the motherboard standoffs, which are not pre-installed, but the motherboard standoffs are also included right here. You also get one of the little standoff thumb screw adapters right there, which I find to be very handy. These are for the power supply. These are for all of your drives. These are for screwing through the grommets to mount 3.5-inch drives. And then lastly, you have some thumb screws here, which you can use for a variety of applications in the case. And that is going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been our unboxing and overview of the new Fractal Design Arc Midi R2 mid-tower computer case. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, you should hit the like button. That's right down there. Go ahead and share with your friends if you think they might also find it informational or useful. And we'll see you all next time on Newegg TV.